Kansas State's 2025 season did not get off to a good start, but all of a sudden the Wildcats are playing with the confidence that we expected them to. How did this happen? This is a team that did not start strong, and it's been a team that's disappointed us through the first quarter of the year. So let's take a look at how Kansas State was able to get things back on track and how Chris Klieman reshaped his image for the 2025 season. This is a team that starts off with a game against Iowa State, comes into the year with a ton of excitement. Same thing with the Cyclones. This was a big game overseas, and a lot of people expected Kansas State to be the better team. Now, that obviously did not happen. You lose Dylan Edwards on the first play of the game, and Avery Johnson struggled. Now, the conditions were part of it, so maybe you could give them the benefit of the doubt there, but there were some concerns larger than just that game. So when you look at this game, it was a concerning loss, if you will, especially with the expectations they had coming in. Now, the defense did play its role, that did its part. They were playing really well and flying around the field. So you felt that, okay, well, we just lost to another team that has high hopes in the Big 12. So maybe we're just looking at this a little bit different lens. We still have everything ahead of us. Then you play North Dakota, and while everyone was saying there's no chance that they lose that game, and I agree, a 38-35 win didn't exactly build any confidence. So then you're looking at, okay, they're 1-1 going into the Army game. Now the Army game is going to provide a little bit of a unique challenge, and it should be the defense that has to play with a lot of discipline. The problem is that the offense didn't get the memo, and the offense didn't get the memo against Arizona either. So they lose 2 consecutive games, and all of a sudden we're wondering what happened to this team. Now, part of it is I think the inconsistencies with one particular player, and then an offense that just struggled because of it. So there were plenty of things that added up to a difficult start. And since then, it's been wildly different. Now, Avery Johnson came into this year with a lot of questions, but also a lot of potential. We knew that he was capable of making big plays with his arm as well as his legs. We just needed to see it a little bit more consistently. This is a guy who is having a pretty solid year, but it hasn't always been that way. When you look at the first 4 games for Avery Johnson, completing 60.6% of his passes, not bad, but not great. 851 yards, 6 touchdowns, 1 interception. So even though he is struggling, he's still taking care of the football. It's just that the offense isn't as dynamic as you might have expected. He also only ran the ball 25 times for 62 yards. He averaged 2.5 yards per carry and 2 touchdowns. Now, again, I understand that Avery Johnson is trying to become more of a pocket passer, if you will, a better passer. But to a certain degree, you're doing him a disservice by not running him. And we talked about this in the first 4 games. Avery Johnson's lack of opportunities to run the football, or at least whatever they were telling him, where they say trying to get him to be more of a pocket passer, it wasn't working out, right? So there were things that weren't working, and you were taking away one of the best things of this offense. And on top of that, Dylan Edwards is dealing with injuries. So you're relying on your running backs to pretty much take care of the rushing attack. You're not allowing Avery Johnson to do what he does best. And I get it. You don't want him to just turn into a runner. You want him to be able to utilize his arm as well. The problem is that they were giving him opportunities to make plays with his legs, and it was to a point where he is scrambling and he thinks that he has to throw the football because if he runs, he's just going to get right back into that routine. It's not necessarily the case. And I think that Kansas State and Chris Klieman figured that out. The next 4 games have been much different. Avery Johnson completing 65.5% of his passes, 941 yards, 9 touchdowns to 1 interception. So again, taking care of the football. 41 carries for 193 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, and 3 touchdowns. So overall, we have seen a wildly different player than we had in the first 4 games. The last 4 games have been good, and that's helped this team as well. Kansas State is a much different team, specifically offensively. First four games, they went 1-3. Next four, 3-1. In those first four games, they averaged 24.2 points per game. The next four, 37.8. Yards per game went from 285 to 413. And then the defense. The defense, in a way, got a little bit worse. However, they turned over the other team much better. The turnover margin was 0 through the first four games, +9 through these most recent games that they played. So this is a much different team that we are seeing. They're playing bend but don't break on defense, but they are taking opportunities away from the opposing team. They are taking advantage of the mistakes that those other teams are making. And this has been a team that's fun to watch over the last few weeks. You start with a win over a UCF team that I think is better than people realize. The loss to Baylor was disappointing, but it at least showed that this offense can play with a little bit of fire in them. And then the next 2 weeks, you beat both TCU and Kansas, who going into those games, I think a lot of people would have picked both of those teams to beat Kansas State. And Kansas State basically creates 2 turnovers of Josh Hoover and takes that for a win, to win by 13. And then they just take it to Kansas. They make sure that there is no doubt about who the better team is, and they win 42-17. So Avery Johnson's ability to play with more confidence, to utilize his legs a little bit more, I like that they're getting him involved. The defense, while it is still giving up quite a few yards, is at least taking advantage of the mistakes that other teams make. So while this team did not start off great, they found a way to turn things around. And Chris Klieman deserves a lot of credit. We were giving Chris Klieman a lot of grief for the struggles that his team had. And to a certain point, it makes sense. But at the same time, you do now have to give him his flowers for what he has done. You have to give him credit for the last few games. And when you look at the remaining schedule, this is a team that could create some issues. Next game against Texas Tech, that is going to be a tough one to win. Oklahoma State and Colorado don't present as many challenges, but Utah on the road is going to be a tough one. When you look at what this team endured last year when they went to BYU, you know the challenges of playing in that state. And depending on when that kickoff is going to be, a nighttime game will present an even bigger challenge. But this is a Kansas State team that now all of a sudden poses as a bigger threat than they were at the beginning of the year. And that's a problem for the Big 12. That's exciting for Kansas State because, again, you started off the year and you thought, oh, man, all of our hopes and dreams for this year are gone. And while there is still plenty of work that needs to be done, this is a team that has a much different outlook as to where they are going for the rest of the season. Do they make the Big 12 championship? I don't necessarily want to say that that's going to happen. However, they feel like they're in a much better position to do so with what they have. And their quarterback is playing well. The defense is taking advantage of mistakes. And that's a good combination to potentially help you get to where you want to be and maybe even still salvage some of the goals that you wanted preseason for the rest of the year.